Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Hari Om Tat Sat. Continuing our study of Rag Bhartman Chandrika. So we left off yesterday. Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur was talking about the cause for walking the Raganuga Bhakti path versus the cause of walking the Vaidhi Bhakti path. So the cause for attaining Raganuga Bhakti is lobha. And we discussed that this term ruchi also was used by Srila Jiva Goswami. When there is a natural taste for the love of a resident of Breja, and you think, I would like to have a love like that. And it's just so nice. And that is what inspires your bhakti. So that's called lobha. That is the cause of attaining Raganuga Bhakti. The cause of attaining Vaidhi Bhakti is faith in the Shastric edict. So he kind of, in the next verse, we're on verse number 4 here. He kind of elaborates on this. Let me just pull it up here. Just go to this one. Yeah. So he says here in text 4, Bhaktao pravritir atrasyat tachikirsha svinishtaya shastra loba tachikirshu syatam ta adhikarinam. So to advance in devotional life means to nurture the single-minded desire to engage exclusively in the limbs of bhakti. I think the idea of this first line, Bhakto pravrittya atrasya tachikirsha svinishtaya. So in bhakti, you just have to have a desire to perform the angas of bhakti. It's called Bhakto pravrittya. To do bhakti, you just have to have a desire to do the actions of bhakti. So that is you can say, general qualification. For other paths like Gyan Yoga, specifically, there are other qualifications required before you can tread those paths. Like in Gyan Sadhana, you have to have an antakarna that is already shuddha, that is purified, in order to do Gyan Yoga Sadhana. And that is also true for Ashtanga Yoga Sadhana. Nowadays, people are calling themselves yogis, but that is just for fun. To really do yoga sadhana, you have to have a antakarna, that means psychic body that is shuddha, that is pure. Otherwise, there's no question of doing those as sadhanas. As an extracurricular activity, okay, but not as a sadhana. And you get that qualification by karma yoga, generally, as at least Krishna presents in the Gita. But for bhakti, you don't have to have a shuddha antakarna in order to do it. Just if you have desire to perform the angas of bhakti, very good, then you do. Bhakto pravrittya atrasya tachikirsha svinishtaya. To advance devotional life means to nurture the single-minded desire, sunishtaya, to engage exclusively in the limbs of bhakti. That's how we advance in bhakti yoga, by doing angas of bhakti. And there's no other way of making advancement in bhakti. You can follow for regular principles also, as we should. Not that I'm trying to speak out against that. But following the four regular principles can be done by atheistic people also. They don't advance in bhakti by following four regular principles. Which means also that if four regular principles are broken, that doesn't mean you can't advance in bhakti. You understand? Because advancement or lack of advancement in bhakti depends on the application of the angas of bhakti. Now, of course, devotees will say, well, you may vow at time of initiation, which may have been the first mistake. And then after the vow, if you break it, then that's like the third offense because you're disobeying the order of the guru or something. So you can get into all those sorts of nuanced discussions, whatever, fine. But as a theological point, you make progress in bhakti by doing the angas of bhakti. And that too, the main ones, we'll come to that later. And by negligence of the angas of bhakti, then you don't make advancement in bhakti. So this first line is basically telling that if you have that single-minded determination to perform the angas of bhakti, that's how you advance in bhakti, general point. And that's why this bhakti is for all human beings. Savai pungsa paro dharma yato bhakti ritukshaja. For all human beings, bhakti is a possibility. In Kali Yuga, if we had to wait for the antakarta to become shuddha, there's no question of bhakti. Just as there's no question of Gyan or yoga, certainly no question of Gyan and yoga, so there'd be no question of bhakti. So this is a general qualification for bhakti. But according to the source of that qualification, then you will be qualified in a specific way. So that is the next line here. Shastra lobhat tash chikirshus syatamta adhikari. So that means you can have adhikar for Vairi Bhakti, or you can have adhikar for Raganuga Bhakti, right? So if your Bhakti again is impelled by Shastric injunctions, that means you have adhikar for Vairi Bhakti. So where did that adhikar come from? So that is described in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu also. It must be like 1, 2, 13. I don't remember the exact shloka. I should look it up. The Dritchaya Ati Bhagyena Jata Shraddha Sasevane. So there it is mentioned that Yadrichaya, somehow or other, the Yadrichaya is referring to the grace of Sadhu, Guru. If you get grace of Sadhu, Guru, and Jata Shraddha Sasevane, and you develop faith, Shraddha, and Makata, you develop faith in Harikata, basically it means you develop faith in Bhakti. So the main adhikar for bhakti is Shraddha, basically. Vairi Bhakti is Shraddha. And that Shraddha came from the grace of Sadhu Guru. That's what that verse is basically saying. It says a few other things, nati sakto navairagyaba. And you're not too attached, you're not too detached. That's just a secondary indicator of the adhikar for bhakti. But the main adhikar is you have Shraddha. Okay, that is the adhikar for Vairi Bhakti. And what is the adhikar for Raganuga Bhakti? So that is also mentioned by Sri Rupa Goswami. I was looking for the verses here in CC, but it's not given directly. So if you go to 12291, he mentions it there. So Ragatmi Kaika Nishta Ye Brajabasi Janadhaya Tesham Bhavapte Lubdho Bhave Atradikaram. So if you have Lubdho means greed. For what? Bhavaptaye, the bhava, tesham, of them. Of who? Ragatmi kaika nishtaye brajabasi janadaya, of the Brijbasis who are fixed exclusively in Ragatmika Bhakti. So if you have greed for the bhava of them, then that is the adhikar for Raganuga Bhakti. So the adhikar for Vairi Bhakti is Shraddha, and the adhikar for Raganuga Bhakti is Ruchi. The difference, you understand? The adhikar for Vairi Bhakti is Shraddha, and the adhikar for Raganuga Bhakti is Ruchi. So there's a distinction between these two terms and also a relationship between them. Now, according to Srila Thakur Bhaktivinoda, he says that this Ruchi is just another type of Shraddha. He calls it as Lobha Moy Shraddha. The Shraddha that is replete with Lobha Mai Shraddha. So he says it is a type of Shraddha. But other acharyas, they make some distinction there between Ruchi and Shraddha. For example, this verse is coming, Shushusho Shraddhamnasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Snamaha Sevaya Vipra Punyachitanisha. Right? So this verse says if you get Sadhu Kripa Mahasevaya, if you get Sadhu Kripa and you render Sadhu Seva, then what you'll get from all that, he says, Vasudeva Kataruchi, Shraddha, Vasudeva Kataruchi. So you'll get Vasudeva Kataruchi. So Vasudeva Kataruchi means taste for Vasudeva Kata. But this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam is speaking about the beginning stages of bhakti. So this taste in Vasudeva Kata means Shraddha in Vasudeva Kata. You understand? Because we don't have too much taste for it. That's why we sleep, unless the speaker is speaking really loud like me at the present moment. Then you sleep nicely. Now you cannot sleep night because you're screaming. Why today you're screaming? Today you're screaming very loud. You can't sleep properly. Normally I'm a little bit more chilled out, so that makes nice for sleeping. So that means there are no ruchi for Vasudeva Kata, but you have Shraddha for Vasudeva Kata. You have faith that if I hear this Vasudeva Kata, I will make progress in Bhakti like this. So that Vasudeva Kata, ruchi means Shraddha basically. It doesn't mean ruchi Bhakti, certainly, because this is the beginning stages, that particular verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. So Shraddha is there, and with Raganuga Bhakti, ruchi is the main thing, a simple ruchi. And what is that ruchi? That I want this bhava to come in me, and you're really into it. And that is what is impelling your bhakti. So in Shraddha, you have, I'm going to use this language of Srila Prabhupada, you have trust in something sublime, right? Although your experience may be somewhat lacking, not somewhat lacking, extremely lacking, on account of not having yet done enough bhakti, so it is lacking. But you have trust in something sublime, and that and that trust, of course, is trust that what Shastra is telling is true, and trust that if I follow the injunction of Shastra, I'll make advancements toward the inner sanctum of my own being and experience God, experience Krishna. So that Shraddha or that trust is carrying you forward in your performance of bhakti. But in Raganuga Bhakti, it is the ruchi that is carrying you forward. There is also going to be trust in Shastra, and we'll hear about this in just a couple of verses from Shiva Shrana. It is not that when you do Raganuga Bhakti, there are no Shastra involved, because you have to hear about Brij Bhaktis from where you will hear about them, from Shastra. And if you have to hear about their moods and all that, that is only going to come from Shastra also. But it is not Shastra, it is not trust in something sublime that is impelling, it is ruchi in something sublime that is impelling. You understand? That there is some, I think the only way to explain it is some sort of profound attraction that has come. I want this thing. It's just like kind of natural. Ruchi is natural. Just like I gave example yesterday, eating Snickers is natural. No one has to tell me. It's very natural. So this ruchi is natural. I want that. You hear about Madhurya Leela, or you hear about the sweet Leela of Krishna, Saki Bhav, Gopa Bhav. And you say, I want that. Simple. And I'll do bhakti because I want that, but not because Shastra is telling and all that. Rather, even if Shastra didn't tell, I would do it. That is ruchi. So that means there's a distinction between Shraddha and ruchi. So in Vaidhi Bhakti, Shraddha is like the main thing, and it will bring you to the point of ruchi bhakti, as we hear in the progression of Sri Rupa Goswami stages. Whereas in Raganuga Bhakti, ruchi is the main thing. And it also meets with Shraddha. Because you have ruchi, you naturally place faith in that which can help you satisfy your ruchi. So you have ruchi that I want that thing. So naturally you place faith in Srimad Bhagavatam and other literatures that help you to get it. I have an experience of this in Ypsilanti, one devotee there. You have to meet her, very sweet, Madhavendra Puri. Just thinking about how it makes me smile. Very wonderful devotee. Anyway, he's very into Krishna Leela. If you associate with him, that's all he wants to hear or read about. And he's very much attracted to Shiva Ram Maharaj's books. So Shiva Ram Maharaj's book has this Krishna Vrindavan series. So a lot of stories of Krishna there. So in the books, Shiva Ram Maharaj kind of creatively gives dialogue to a lot of the verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. And that dialogue is based on his research of various shastras, bhakti shastras. And then he kind of creates a dialogue in the voice of the Nityasiddhas And so it creates a very dynamic sort of story that you're reading, hearing about. So we were reading together, Madhavendra Puri and I, some devotees in Ypsilanti. And some point came up, maybe I asked a question, someone asked a question. And then Madhavendra Puri was answering according to the books from Sri Ram Maharaj. And he said, if you want to look up the verses that he's referencing, you can, check out the footnotes. He has many footnotes where it gives us Shastric references, so you can see that it's not just made up. He said, but I myself have never checked it. And he went on to say that when you eating something sweet, you don't have to check. And so he was finding something sweet in the dialogues that were given. So there was no need to check it. There was a natural faith in what was being presented because it was satisfying the ruchi. He had ruchi for particular Krishna Lila. And so this book was satisfying that taste. And so no need to check. So in that way, you can see they also have faith in Shastra, but that is secondary to the ruchi. Whereas in Vaidhi Bhakti, Shraddha is the main thing, and ruchi will come up later, right? So for the Vaidhi Bhaktas, they always got to confirm everything. Where is the Shastra Praman for that? Where's the Shastra? They cannot just enjoy sweet because Krishna, they still have jaundice of avidya very strong. So they cannot just enjoy the sweet. They have to ask from where the sweet is coming. Just like new people of the Hare Krishna movement, maybe y'all don't experience this, but when living in the temple, we used to sit all the time on Sunday feast. New people will come to the temple and in the prasadam line, what is this? What is that? What is that? Probably on every preparation. It's like, y'all out here eating meat and all sorts of abominable things. Y'all over here like analyzing every single preparation. I like Vaidhi Bhakti is like that. Where's the Shastra Pramana? Where's the Shastra Injunction? What is that? What is that? But in Raganuga Bhakti, ruchi is the main thing. If ruchi is satisfied, they are happy. So again, it is not that there are no Shastra in ruchi, but the Shastra is secondary. And the ruchi is the main thing. Where in Vaidhi Bhakti, the Shraddha is the main thing. Trust in something sublime, and you make progress, hopefully. Then the ruchi will come up later after Anartha Vritti, Nishtas, and then ruchi bhakti. Okay, so there's a distinction between these two adhikars mentioned. So next verse he says, so in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Sri Rupa Goswami has described the symptoms of pure greed as follows. So if you have the greed, what is the symptom of the greed? So that is mentioned here in this particular verse. Tata bhavadi madhurye shrutidhir yarapekshate. Natara shastram na yuktam chata lobhati lakshanam. So here, translation of the verse. If by hearing about the sweetness of the intimate loving moods exchanged between Sri Krishna and his cherished companions, one experiences in his heart the natural longing to attain a loving sentiment similar to that of Krishna's dear one, so that's the lobha that we've already heard about, without being motivated by logic or scriptural arguments, na atra shastram, na yuktam cha, ta lobhati lakshana. That is the symptom, lakshana, of the lobha. It is to be considered symptomatic of the appearance of spiritual greed. So Rupa Goswami's verse is saying, na atra shastram, na yuktam cha, this line here, that there is no dependence on Shastra Yukti. So that is different from Vaidhi Bhakti, right? Remember, of course not. If you go back to study BRS, and Sri Rupa Goswami, after telling the adhikar for Vaidhi Bhakti, then he gives the 3 divisions of persons having that adhikar. So main adhikar is Shraddha, as we've already described. Then he gives it 3, Shraddha and what? Shastric injunction. So we call it, sometimes we use this term, Shastriya Shraddha. Then he says there are 3 people having that adhikar. The Uttama adhikar, he goes on to say, oh my God, why am I forgetting the verse now? Ya Shastra Yuktam Chanipuna Sarvata Dhrida Nishtaya. Prodha Shraddha. So he goes on to say that when you are Nipuna, expert in Shastra and Yukti, and Prodha Shraddha, and you have deep faith, then you have Uttam Adhikar. You have the best Adhikar for Vaidhi Bhakti. So our faith in and knowledge of Shastra is very critical in Vaidhi Bhakti. And he used the word yukti. The word yukti means logic. So this means logic with the taste. Okay, I shouldn't have said that. This taste is different from the ruchi taste that we're talking about with greed. But Srila Jiva Goswami uses this language that it is logic with taste in bhakti scriptures. So it's not just dry logic where you just try to figure things out with your mental speculative brain, but it is taste with the scriptures. You're studying shastras and putting two and two together like that. It's called yukti. It seems if you have the ruchi or the loba, na atra shastram, na yuktem cha. So there is no dependence on shastra yukti, which is, so this is considered as the lakshana, or one of the characteristics. I think I should have reviewed it. I'm pretty sure in the commentary by Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur to this particular verse of BRS, he goes on to say that this is not always necessarily the symptom, because a Raganuga Bhakta could be like really into Shastra and Yukti also. As you can see, all of our Goswamis, they're really into Shastra and Yukti. So he goes on to say that this may not necessarily be the outstanding characteristic. I don't know if he provides an alternative there. But the basic idea here is that there is a dependence on Shastra and Yukti. So someone will say, you know, what is the Shastra Pramana for this attraction? You're just a neophyte devotee. How can you be already attracted to this? You're just a newcomer, like that. So the guy who has ruchi, he's not depending on the Shastra Yukti. So Sri Vishwanath was going to go on to explain this. So he goes on to say here, this line here, this idamama bhuya, keep this one in mind. He goes on to say here, upon hearing about the sweetness of the sentiment of amorous love and other moods that exist in the associates in Krishna's Braja pastimes, one may yearn, may such a mood arise in my heart. Idam mama bhuyat iti. May such a mood rise in my heart. What did you do? You were hearing about the sweet bhavas of the Shringara Rasa, etc., of the Braja Lila Parikar. So you heard that, and then you thought, Idam mama bhuyat iti. May that come in me. That is the thinking of this bhakta. At that time, he need no longer rely on logic or scriptural arguments. If such scriptural impetus persists, then one's sentiments cannot be identified as greed. So that's a clarifying point. If one feels the need to question that attraction even, then it is not a genuine attraction. It is not lobha or ruchi. Oh, how I can have and do I have? Then there's no ruchi there. No one ever develops greed on the basis of the scriptural injunction. So this is also a very interesting statement. No one develops lobha on the basis of scriptural injunction. So the idea, and this idea you will encounter in our temples usually, that if you keep making progress in Vaidhi Bhakti, following Shastra injunctions, then lobha will come one day. Nope, that's not how it works. You're not going to get lobha by following Shastra Vidhi. That's not where it comes from. So nor is there any consideration of spiritual qualification or lack thereof for obtaining it. Just like sometimes some newcomer may say, you know, I like the Madhurya Leela. I just really want to have that. Some devotee will go and chastise him. Who do you think you are that you can attain such high thing? Well, honestly, who do I think I am that I can attain anything about Krishna? You know, I'm such a low Kali Yuga reprobate. The fact that I could even attain Gyan Samadhi, or to speak of these high bhakti things, it's a pretty audacious thing to think that I could attain Yoga Samadhi. Just like now, when we hear about people saying that maybe we don't hear this so much, but I have heard people say, you can attain Samadhi in yoga, and we all have a good laugh. Definitely. I was at Jiva Institute one year in Vrindavan, and one class there, one Srimad Bhagavatam class. And there was one lady in the class, she was a yogi, but she was like a serious practitioner. Like she was really into the asana. She was into the whole yoga culture, everything. Like serious. Like not like the people we make fun of, like serious. She was like into it. And then at one point, some critique came up about attaining yoga samadhi in the class, something to that effect. And she immediately raised her hand. Actually, the class may have been a Yoga Sutras class by Evan Bryant. That's what it was. So he kind of like glossed over the samadhi part, saying that no one could attain samadhi. And she immediately objected. No, I could attain samadhi. And everyone in the class, we were all like, we didn't say anything because she was nice, but we all had that like look and like, this one, look, she thinks she can attain samadhi. So in Kali Yuga, it's pretty audacious to even think I can attain yoga samadhi. With the speak of these high bhakti things. So if I'm going to shoot for the rhino, I might as well shoot for it and go for the highest thing. In other words, the point is here, there's no question of thinking, oh, I am not qualified or I'm qualified. It's just a question of ruchi. I like that thing. Whether I'm qualified or not is besides the point. So because of the liking for the thing, I'll become audacious. That's basically what's going to happen. What is our audaciousness in this sort of bhakti? That you're going to try for it. That is audacious. Why are you trying for it? Because you like it. Ruchi. The ruchi is there. So if you start analyzing am I qualified? I don't think I'm so qualified. I mean, you have no ruchi. There's no ruchi for the thing. That's why you're getting lost in mental, realm like that. Sidebar, we should always keep in mind, spiritual life is audacious life. Therefore, it takes, even for Vaidhi Bhakti, honestly, the idea that you will take Vaidhi Bhakti all the way to Bhav Bhakti, that is itself an audacious endeavor. I even think that most devotees don't even believe they can attain Bhava. Therefore, they apply Sadhana Bhakti in a weak way, right? Because if you don't have any sense of your prospect, if you don't have any sense that you can truly obtain your prospect, then the inner motivation to strive for it with courage and perseverance and assiduousness and audaciousness will not be there because you don't really truly believe you can get it. But once you truly believe you can get it, then you become audacious and you become perseverant. Is that the word? Perseverant? That's the word, right? And etc. All these qualities come to the fore. So someone who has ruchi, he thinks he can get it. So he's not going to think I might not qualify. So rather, greed arises spontaneously simply upon hearing about or seeing the object of one's longing. Okay. So that is that particular verse. Should be clear. So finally, having discussed briefly the lakshana, characteristic of the lobha, now he wants to discuss the cause of the lobha. So where does lobha come from? So we discussed the cause of Raganuga Bhakti, that is lobha. He discussed the lobha as the adhikar for Raganuga Bhakti. He discussed the lakshana of lobha. Now what is the cause of lobha? So cause of lobha is twofold. Sacha Bhagavat Kripa Hetuka, that's one. The second one, Anuragi Bhakta Kripa Hetuka Shteti Dvipidha. Translation, there are two sources of such greed. The first one, Bhagavat Kripa, the mercy of Bhagavan. The second one, Anuragi Bhakta Kripa, the mercy bestowed by devotees who have spontaneous loving devotion. Anuragi Bhakta. So there's Anuragi Bhakta. Anuragi Bhakta refers to a Raganuga Sadhaka or a Raganuga Siddha, both. They can give this lobha. You understand? Both of them can give it. Anuragi Bhakta means Anuragi means one who is attached to the Braja Bhav. So Sadhaka type or Siddha type. So by their mercy, it also can come. So these are the two ways in which lobha is making its appearance. That's why it is not true that just by following Shastra Vidhi and getting purified, then one day lobha will come. No. Lobha comes from Bhagavat Kripa or Anuragi Bhakta Kripa. Now, the Bhagavat Kripa is very rare. So a general way it is coming is this Bhakta Kripa. So Sri Vishnu elaborates on that also. Tatra Bhakta Kripa Hetukas Dvibida. So there are two types of Bhakta Kripa. Praktana and Adunikascha. So he goes on to say, there are two types of greed arising from the mercy of the devotee. Ancient Praktana, also called Prachinna, and present Adunika. So anyway, next sentence. The greed arising from mercy received in previous lives from Krishna's devotees who are endowed with the sweet sentiments of Sri Shyam Sundar's eternal associates in Braja is called Praktana. And the greed arising from the mercy of such elevated devotees in the present life only is called Adunika. So some souls have this greed from previous life, and some souls get it this life. So if they get it from previous life, it's called Praktana. They get it in this life, it's called Adunika. That is the saying here. Now he goes on to say this thing here, which is interesting. Those whose spiritual hunger has already been awakened in previous life, spiritual hunger here means Lobha, will immediately take shelter at the lotus feet of a Raganuga Rasik Guru when such greed manifests in this life. So Krishna, if you may remember from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, Arjuna asked a question, hey, about the yogi. He says, if this yogi begins the path of yoga with faith, but later on due to chalati manasa, flickering mind, he falls away, then what happens to him? Does he not become like a riven cloud with no place in any sphere? And then Krishna goes on to say, Nahi kalyana krit kashchit, that those who do the auspicious work of yoga, kalyana krit, they do the auspicious work, which is yoga, then they will not meet with obstacles. And then describing that, he goes on to say, the one who falls away after short practice, he goes to Swarga and enjoys. And then he comes down to the earth planet and he takes birth in the family of rich merchants or in the family of brahmanas. Or if he's extremely fortunate, after long practice, he takes birth in the family of yogis. In any case, he becomes reunited. Krishna goes on to say, he becomes reunited with the psyche of his previous life of practice in this life. So that is the kalyana krit, because that is the concerning part. You do all this hard work, to get your mind in shape. Then you fall away and die. All that work is useless. So no. You become reunited with the psyche of the previous life. So if you get the lobha in the previous life, then you get reunited with that psyche in this life. Then you will search out a certain type of guru. So you will find this person will be very picky. That's probably not the best way of articulating it. But he will look for a guru who can satisfy that taste, basically. So he looks for a Raganuga Rasi gurus, use this language as used to in the translation. That language is not used in the Sanskrit, but it is here in the language. It says you will take shelter of a guru who basically has the lobha. And for the person, sadhakas whose greed is recent, however, develop that intense thirst only after taking shelter of the lotus feet of a spiritual master. So those of us who may be fortunate enough to develop greed in this life, it will happen after we've taken shelter of Guru. And maybe only later we'll develop that greed, either from Gurudev himself, and if not from Gurudev, from some other sadhu, you'll get it. So Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu confirms that engagement in bhakti due to greed, which arises only by the mercy of Sri Krishna and his devotees, is known as Raganuga Bhakti. Some also call it Pushti Marg. So this is a verse from BRS, this verse. Krishna ta bhakta karunya matralo bhaika hetuka Pushti Margataya kashche iya raga nugochita. It says the exclusive cause, matra hetuka, this word matra means exclusive cause of lobha, is the karunya, mercy, of Krishna or his bhakta. That is the exclusive clause of the lobha. Sri Jiva Goswami, commenting on this word matra in the BRS, says that in some places it may be possible for someone following Varnashram Dharma to develop Vaidhi Bhakti. But that is not true in the case of Raganuga Bhakti. There are only one cause for this, lobha, and Raganuga Bhakti. So that's some distinction he's making here between the two different paths. It is called Pushti Marg, the path of nourishment. By Vallabhacharya, specifically his group, they call it as the Pushti Marga, the path of nourishment. Okay, so that's his breakdown here of all the things related to Lobha. Now he wants to move on for how the progressive life of the person who's developed this adhikar, what does his progressive spiritual life look like? So he spent several statements on the nature of the adhikar, the characteristics of it, the cause of it, and so on. Now the progressive inner life of such a devotee. That is the rest of this first part. It's two parts, first illumination and pratama, prakasha, and the second illumination. So it's just like two big sections. And the rest of this first section is the unfolding of the inner life of one who actually has Lobha. So it is very interesting. We should be very interested in this as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, because when we speak of inner life, this is what we really mean by it. You know, we don't just mean devoid of lust, envy, greed, you know, boring. Everyone says that. Everyone says that. What is so unique about that? What is, I'm going to use a fancy word here, sui generis? It just means unique. It's a good word. What is sui generis, or the sine qua non? That's also another reason. Sine qua non means the vital factor that it can't, the vital factor that a thing can't go without is called the sine qua non. These are some really fancy vocab words that I haven't used in like years. I'm probably even saying it in a ghetto way. Like, I'm probably not even saying it like totally, like if someone who speaks English properly hears it, they're probably like, anyway, the sine qua non is a good word. It means the vital element of something that a thing can't do without. So when we speak about the inner life of a Gaudiya Vaishnava, the sine qua non of that inner life is the substance that we're hearing in this book. When we speak about the inner life of a Gaudiya Vaishnava only in terms of being devoid of, or the absence of, lust, envy, and so on, the things that are threatening our life, you know, the absence of anartha, that is not what is meant by inner life cultivation for Gaudiya Vaishnavas. So we should be attracted to this if we're interested in becoming a Gaudiya Vaishnava and representing or sharing Gaudiya Vaishnavas with those around us. This should be interesting for us. So we'll hear about that unfolding of the inner world of this bhakta tomorrow, because it's already 9 o'clock. And I'm tired because I've been yelling and I was, didn't sleep again. So we'll pause here, see if there are any comments here. Can you please share the PDF with us? Sure, I can share. You can find also Rav Vartmachandrika PDF. And you'll find that it's there. Go to Rav Vartmachandrika purebhakti.com on the Google, then it is there. Very easy to get, not very difficult. Mukunda has a question below.
Hare Krishna. Collect my thoughts. Yeah, so the mercy of a devotee is one of the causes of Lobha. So is that like an active bestowal of mercy? Like, are they doing something to give you Lobha, or is it passive in the sense of like you, by being in their presence, you're receiving their mercy and then like receiving
That's
Lobha?
A good question. My intuition tells me it can be both or either. The basic idea is that you're hearing about the bridge bhaktis from these devotees who are anuragi, right? So they're pursuing that, or they've attained it. They're sadhaka or siddha. So when they speak about Krishna consciousness, and when we say Krishna consciousness, we mean the real Krishna consciousness, Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavitamati. Then, even if you're just in their presence hearing that, then that Lobha can come to you, because you're hearing from them with attentively with, maybe affection. And so they're not, maybe it's not in their consciousness, may I give this loba to this one. But just by him speaking with the topic with so much attraction and affection, so it comes to you naturally, anuragi. Or it could be you're a preacher and you're trying to distribute Christian consciousness to the people of this world, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was trying to do, or as Krishna himself was trying to do. And so you are actively speaking such beautiful topics in a way that it shall enter inside their consciousness and they become like this, attracted. And they get ruchi, yes, let this come to me. So I think it happens, I say my intuition because with my experience with Ayandra, which I've shared on several occasions in this group also, I can't say that Ayandra was, necessarily specifically thinking about me and that he should give me some attraction to the actual ideals of Krishna consciousness. But that was the effect of being in his presence and hearing the way that he talked about Krishna consciousness. That I'm not saying I have ruchi, by the way, guys, but at least the attraction to the idea became solid, as I've often described it in describing my own spiritual life. Whatever I thought Christian consciousness was before I met him got completely destroyed in those 6 days in his presence in Vrindavan. I literally can't remember what I thought Christian consciousness was before I met him. And my life after meeting him and hearing from him, or hearing his lectures and so on, for years together, the whole way that I think about Christian consciousness and pursue it was based on how I heard from him. Like that's basically how, like even the way I'm attracted to Krishna consciousness, the sort of things that I get into in Krishna consciousness is basically coming from that association. I can't say that he was consciously thinking of me trying to give it, but it came somehow or other. So it can be either or both. That's what my intuition tells me. That's the best I could do, that one. Okie dokes. Agape says, did you mention that those who attain loba only do so after taking initiation? So is initiation prerequisite of attaining mercy loba? So those who get mercy in a previous life, get mercy means they get loba in a previous life from sadhus. So then they just connect with a guru who can help grow that. But some people, they don't get the loba. Those who get the loba in this life, so it seems after they take shelter of the lotus feet of a guru. So the word used here in the Sanskrit was guru padashrayam, I think. I was wondering about this actually also. Yeah, dvitiya, so the second guy. So the first guy who has loba inside, he just finds a guru and helps grow him. The second guy, dvitiya, so he takes shelter of a guru, guru charanashraya. And then he develops the loba afterwards. So I think in the translation it said initiation, but because Srila Rupa Goswami makes a distinction between taking shelter of a guru and being initiated by him, I would have to ask about this, but there may actually be some distinction there. You take shelter of a guru, means a sadhu who is speaking about these things, and you take shelter of him, and you get the loba in this life from such a guru. So that sentence was just to say that some get the loba previous life, and some get the loba in this life. So if they get it in this life, it must mean that they heard from some guru. Some guru means some sadhu is speaking. They heard from him. And they got it in this life. And then they take shelter of that guru, grow it. So I would have to ask. I know in the translation it's saying here initiation, but Sri Rupa Goswami does make a distinction between taking shelter and being initiated. So there might be some distinction there. I'll have to ask about it. And is the person who develops ruchi quickly in this life do the bhakti practices from previous life considered superior according to our Shastra? Well, superior in a sense. First of all, he develops ruchi means he got ruchi. He didn't develop it. He got the ruchi from some Vaishnava who was speaking about these topics in such a pleasing way that the ruchi came to him. So he got the ruchi. So is it due to bhakti practices from previous life? Well, some people got the ruchi in a previous life. So then they reconnect with that psyche in this life. So the answer could be yes on that level. But some people get the ruchi in this life. Ruchi or lobha, I'm using these words interchangeably. They get in this life because they by chance encounter some Amiragi Bhakta and he's speaking so nicely, and then the ruchi comes. I want to be a Brijbasi. So is that person considered superior? So he's considered superior in terms of the force of his attraction, right? As we were saying, with Shraddha, there's trust in something sublime, but still you're following Shastric edicts as medicine, right? What is that verse from Srimad Bhagavatam? 10th canto, chapter 1, verse 4. How does that verse go? This is a good verse. God, how does it start? I'm looking it up. I can't remember. Okay, here it is. So Nivritta Tarshar, yeah. Upagiyamana Bovo Shadhat Totramano Abhiramat. You know this verse. So this is Parkshat Maharaj is speaking this verse. So there are some people who are Nivritta Tarshar. That means they are devoid of thirst. They don't have any thirst for matter. So they do bhakti. And then there are those who are bhava oshada. Nivritta Tarshar means a siddha. Then there are those who are bhavo ashoda, means this harikatha is the medicine for them. So this is the sadhakas. So when you have Vai Bhakti Adhikar, so this harikatha is the medicine. So you have trust in something sublime, but it's like taking medicine. Well, a little bitter. But with ruchi, it is not medicine. You're like digging it. You're like digging every part of it. And it's not medicine. So he's considered superior in terms of the force of his attraction. But he's not necessarily considered superior in terms of like spiritual advancement. So I think, culturally speaking, when I say culturally speaking, I mean within our ISKCON culture. Often when we hear about like a Raganuga devotee or someone's into Raganuga Bhakti, we're like, well, they're going to become proud because they think they're better than everyone. They're more advanced than everyone. That's usually the culture that we've inherited around this particular subject matter. But actually, he's not the Raganuga Sadhaka who's been gifted Loba or Ruchi. He's not superior in terms of consciousness necessarily or at all. But he's considered superior in terms of his attraction, the force of his attraction, the impelling force by which he's doing bhakti. Obviously, if you're doing bhakti because you like it versus it being your medicine, then that's, better for sure, no doubt about it. But he could be neophyte like anything. So we'll hear about that later. He still have to make progress, but his progress will be decently rapid because of the force of his attraction. So that's why he's called a superior in that sense. Otherwise, the Vaidhi Bhaktas, you know how it is being the Vaidhi Bhakti, because we have, direct lived experience day to day. Okay, I got chapter 16 rounds. And then you finish the 16 rounds. You put the bee bag down, and then you actually forget where it is the next morning. Where did I put that bee bag? So that's because it is medicine, so therefore a little inferior. But progress can be, they're not advanced in terms of consciousness. So let's answer there. Makula's got another question. Yay. Always has
So, my gosh, I always lose my thoughts right when I come off mute. Let me see. Oh yeah. So I was wondering about this. It was talking about the loba can be a continuation from the previous life, or it can be something that is gifted in the present or whatever it may be. But I was wondering, can that loba be squashed at all? Like if what I'm thinking about is a new bhakta comes into ISKCON, and then someone sees that they're very attracted to pastimes of Krishna, and then as we tend to do, we tell them that they're not ready to hear that or whatever it may be. So is it possible to squash that greed, or is it something that will always persist if it's real?
If the loba is from a previous life, so he's going to choose his association carefully, because he's been united with that sort of psyche already. So he will be, my intuition tells me he's going to be very selective about his association in that regard, knowing with whom to hide his attraction and with whom to divulge it. If the loba is coming fresh in this life from a guru that you've taken shelter of, some sadhu, and then you associate with others who, speak disparagingly in so many ways, it cannot be crushed if you are sheltered in that guru or that sadhu, because you will take it to him only, or her, as it were, and then they'll set the record straight. But if you hear disparaging things, specifically disparaging, if not disparaging, but you hear in such a way that it makes you offensive, then in that case, it might get squashed. Because even bhava can get downgraded, and I don't even know how this works, but Srila Rupa Goswami says in the 3rd chapter of the first ocean that bhava can be reduced to a lower sentiment if you do aparad. And it can even be, I think he even says you can lose it. So that's interesting. That's in relationship to bhav bhakti, which is the sadhya for sadhana. So certainly with loba, if you hear so many things and it causes you to become restless in mind, and you commit aparad because of that, then your loba can become crushed. But yeah, if you're actually sheltered in a sadhu, like I can tell you in my lived experience, feeling connected to a sadhu, even if not fully sheltered, like I felt connected to Andrew Prabhu because of that small association. So many people were telling so many things. I was like, y'all know what you're talking about. And it wasn't like I could disprove them necessarily at that particular moment in my development. But I was like, y'all don't know what you're talking about, clearly. Because if you knew what you're talking about, you would be attracted to this. But I had to, go and study to strengthen strengthen the force of that attraction. I went to Shastra to study and all that. But just by feeling connected with Andrew Prabhu, so I heard so many disparaging things and this thing and the other thing, and it didn't touch the heart at all. So if you are feeling connected deeply to some sadhu or sheltered to some sadhu, the loba will not be able to be touched. Just like ruchi. I like Snickers. It is not good for me. So some Ayurvedic doctor I'll meet, they'll give me all the 108 reasons why the Snickers is not good for me. Thank you very much, doctor. And then after that, I leave the doctor's office, I will go and buy the Snickers. It is inevitable. But that is the nature of ruchi. That is the nature of loba. So only in cases where you get confused and you do aparad, and then you're in trouble. But if there's no aparad, loba will not be able to be touched.
Yeah, so the protection is there in the good association.
Yeah, for sure. We have to, Srila Rupa Goswami also tells us to choose our association with discernment, right? And the verse, Krishneta Yashagiri Tamana Sadriyeta, etc. In that particular verse, he says we should do the loving exchanges of verse 4 with discernment. So, this is ultimately what is meant by Swajatiya Sadhu Sangha, right? Like-minded Sadhu Sangha, or Swajati, same family. So if you get the loba, you'll know, like, okay, with this fellow I can speak, with that fellow I can't speak. And you'll associate with discernment. So in institutions, they don't like this idea because they're like, well, you're discriminating against devotees. Yeah, definitely. Because Srila Rupa Goswami has advised us to associate with discernment. Some devotees you have to associate, from a distance. And other devotees you take close to your heart. That's just the way that's how it works effectively. So if you have loba, your intelligence will work accordingly. Okay, these other friends, they also like the Snickers. So with them we can talk Snickers. But this fellow, we can't talk Snickers. He's Ayurvedic guy. He'll find fault. He will say so many things. So around him, I'll just smile and shake my head like this. So sanghas will be important, obviously, as these things become a lived reality. So Sid has the question.
Hey, first of all, good to see you, JJP. It's been a while.
Even though I see only the black screen. When are you coming to the Bhakti Center?
I'll call you. How's that sound?
Okay.
Let me call you. I'll explain the whole thing. No, but my question was, shoot. No, okay. So I think this is what it was. The distinction between this loba that comes from a previous life versus almost like the lokika shraddha that can appear. I think I remember you giving a Bhagavad Gita class and you were talking about the 10th chapter or the 11th chapter, where Arjuna sees the universal form and he accepts or I don't know if it's the universal form. It's basically when Arjuna says to Krishna, I accept everything as you have told me.
Right.
Yes. And so there's that idea that like people can come in and they'll hear from someone and it'll be like, I trust you, I accept everything as you have told me. But that distinction between like, I accept everything as you have told me just because like I see this as a particularly pious thing, or like as like something like, oh, like this is like what's good in the society of devotees, so I accept it, versus like having that taste and like that, inner like drive for just like hear like the taste for whatever the thing is, right? So like the loba that comes from a previous life. You might have talked about this before because I tuned in halfway through, and if you have, you could tell me that I should just go back and re-listen. But yeah, just curious as to like that distinction between the loba versus the like lokika shraddha.
That's a good question, actually. So the lokika shraddha means like common faith, status quo faith. That is maybe one way of thinking about lokika shraddha, status quo. So everyone in society says like this, does like that. So yeah, I also accept. I like these people, like the food, like the festivals and everything. So I also accept everything without discernment, without desire. But it is not based on ruchi. It is just based on status quo. It's not based on ruchi, and it's also not based on shastra. So there's no shastra understanding in that psyche, and there's also no ruchi in that psyche. It is just perhaps the desire to belong, the desire to fit in, the lokika shraddha. So he accepts everything simply, and that person may end up making progress. For them, progress will mean that depending on their sangha, they develop shastriya shraddha, or else they get ruchi. So there's ruchi bhakta. He is hearing from an anuragi bhakta, and he develops the taste. And what is the taste? May that love that I just heard about, may that love come to me. That is his taste. And whatever I got to do to get that love, I'm prepared to do that. So, chant Hare Krishna, okay, I'll chant it. Hear this, okay, I'll hear that. Whatever is required for me to get that consciousness of love, that mentality, or as I was using the language in the beginning of these classes, I want those chitta-vrittis. Because the chitta-vrittis I got right now are problematic. Keep it simple. My present chitta-vrittis are a problem. So I want those chitta-vrittis, the ones that run after Krishna, run after Radha, and their I want those chitta-vrittis like that. That is the ruchi. And whatever I got to do to get it, if I got to chant Hare Krishna, if I got to do this, that, and other thing, then I'm prepared to do that. So that ruchi, again, is a very powerful force that causes the individual with it to be absorbed in bhakti. But in the Lokika Shraddha guy, he does with his status quo. So the status quo also includes all sorts of material activities, like prajalpa, like atyahara, like prayasa. Let's go here and there and there, another place, another place, another place, right? Rupa Goswami speaks about these things. That is also status quo, isn't it? Atyahara prayasa cha. What is that? Loyam? No, not loyam. Jana sangha niyamagraha. No, Jana sangha chaloya.
Prajalpa.
Prajalpa niyamagraha, right? Why did I? Yeah. So that is also status quo. So all of that he'll embrace. So that is not very good. And that means the absorption in bhakti will not be there. He'll mostly be absorbed in backbiting or back scratching, trying to make advancement in the institution, like the regular things that you see in the material world. Not much distinction between this sort of person and, karmi, honestly. So he has a little simple faith in bhakti. But again, if it's lokika shraddha, that faith can be crushed also. So that is also the distinction between the true Vaidhi Bhakta and the Lokika Shraddha guy. The Lokika Shraddha guy, all it takes is the temple president doing something that he wasn't supposed to do, and devotees defending him. He's like, I lose all faith in bhakti. So that happens all the time. Or maybe he gets initiated because everyone gets initiated. So he also got initiated, and then his guru falls down, and then he says, to hell with this bhakti thing. So that Lokika Shraddha can get crushed. That Shraddha that is not grounded in sacred texts or grounded in ruchi can be crushed by the material energy due to various circumstances. So these are some distinctions between the two.
Awesome. Thanks, JJP.
Yeah, ruchi looks a little ordinary. Like if you go to Breja, it's all associated with these bridge bhakti. So basically all of them have ruchi. They're not sadhakas, many of them maybe, but they all have ruchi, simple faith. They go and do Govardhan Parikram. When the Krishna festivals are there, all participate with joy. So it's kind of like a ruchi, like a simple taste for Vrindavan, for serving Govardhan Hill. Okay, one may argue that no, that is Lokika Shraddha because they're not after Brajras, but usually they're also interested in such an idea. It is not very evolved. Like I said, even if you have ruchi, you have to still develop your consciousness. It's not like you're advanced just because you have ruchi. So all these Brajbasis, I would suspect, I will give the benefit of the doubt. I even generally think that they all have ruchi. They think I want to be Radha's maidservant because that is the culture also. The whole atmosphere is that. So that is why Brajavasa is one of the important angas of bhakti. The whole atmosphere is that. But they still have to develop their consciousness if they really want to get it. But they have that ruchi and nothing will break it. So many, this thing, that other thing happening in the world, they'll not give up doing Govardhan Parikram. They'll not give up worship Radha Krishna. There's very even that little bit of ruchi there, even though they're not maybe necessarily evolved in terms of their consciousness, it's very powerful. Nothing will cause them to lose it. Unless some apparatus, that is another thing. But the Lokika Shraddha guy, this person, he can be lost again. So that's what happens in a lot of Krishna consciousness. You see so many people come and they also go, they leave Krishna consciousness. So how is that possible? So you'll discover most people who leave, if it's not due to offenses, then it's due to not having bhakti grounded in sacred text or ruchi. So their circumstances are there, they're forced to leave. Okie dokes. So maybe we'll stop here for today and continue subject matter tomorrow. Hari Om Tat Sat Srimad Bhagavatam Chandrika Ki Jai. Shri Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Go Pramandi Hari Bo. Later, family.